Chapter 10. At that moment, Paul was off-site in an operations room composed of a 9-rack of monitors and 3 operators handling 6 different hazmat drones. Not so different from those used for exploring radioactive death zones, though these had finer motor control. Here, within the green zone of the area designated in official Monarch documentation as Ground Zero, Paul watched as tracked, claw-handed drones and lumbering quantum-insulated scientists worked the forsaken landscape within Warehouse 21B. The view these multiple screens offered was not always perfect. The crews at Ground Zero had to replace cameras frequently. Not much survived in the red zone. "It pains me that Will is going to be remembered as a lunatic," he said to Sophia. "That his theories were never taken seriously." Sophia leaned into one console, bending the thread mic toward her.
"Doctors Connor and Chang, please attend to remote unit C. One of the receivers have degraded. Thank you."
She turned to Paul. "As will you, so you tell me." She snapped the pen light on, flicked the beam from his left eye to right and back again, snapped it off. "As will I, for all the work I've done here." "The activation of the machine fractured the Myers-Joyce field. The fracture will grow, universal chronon count will hit 0, and time itself will end." This was fact. "In that sense, humanity's not going to remember anything. Trapped, unaware, in a sub-moment self-dividing into infinity. Those of us chosen to go on will be tortured by more important things than a lack of recognition." He sighed. "But we have 5 more years. Time enough for Project Lifeboat to be properly developed and become operational." Sophia pressed 2 fingers to his carotid. "About that," she said. "I've rechecked my calculations for a 3rd time and can find no error." She checked his pulse against her watch. "Sophia?" She removed her hand. "You have been to this end-of-time event. Yes, I understand. You saw clocks and calendars and papers. They provided you a date. But the data does not lie. We have mere days, not years. At the current rate of decay, the Myers-Joyce field would collapse in 2, perhaps 3 days at most. You must take these findings seriously. The waveform has collapsed, as you said so often. The future is written because events in the past led you to witness the future. I understand. But you must consider the likelihood that a reason your visions do not extend beyond a few days from now is because what is when time ends. Not 5 years, not next month, but this week. Enough." Sophia flinched, stepped back. "Please," he said. "Enough." Another moment of lost control. This was becoming common. He was fighting to retain focus, to maintain his discipline and resolve. He had decided upon and built a protocol for his behavior when this final week arrived, knowing that raw programming may be the only thing to keep him on mission once his illness properly asserted itself. If he had to think too much, plan too much, adjust too much, it opened the gates to error, flawed thinking, damaged reasoning, and a lack of perspective. He had to trust to the plan laid out by his clever-headed and less instinctual past self. He was a soldier now, taking orders from the more complete version he used to be. He could not tolerate anyone interfering with that coding. "It is too late for a course correction. The future is locked." Sophia's jaw was set. "I am not working night and day simply to pass the time between now and doomsday." Paul glanced at the monitors. "Let's change the subject. The tower's chronon stores, how are they doing?" Warehouse 21B, nestled on the fringe of what had once been Riverport's thriving dockyards, had been a very respectable laboratory. In some ways, the fingerprint of the original owner survived. Despite the fickle entropic fluctuations that possessed the place, the workbenches remained upright, though most of the original equipment had long since crumbled to dust. A bunk bed, neatly made, survived layered in the accreted powdery fallout of age and time. Resting atop a caved-in 12-cup coffee maker, angled toward the camera, was a dusty photograph of a family of 4. Mother, father, 2 sons. Tape yellowed and withered and curled on 3 corners. How Paul wished he had never activated that machine. The scientist at Ground Zero clicked life back into the track claw robot and gave a thumbs up to the camera. In the operations room, a controller leaned forward on the throttle and trundled the bot toward the room's centerpiece. A roiling and thumping time-space anomaly encapsulated, trapped within a $12 billion contraption designed to harness and siphon off the rampant torrents of chronon energy that had been sprayed out for the last 6 years. Delicately, the operator manipulated the fine worker pincer to replace various burnt-out components on the shell. Racked about the site, an elaborate array of chronon batteries absorbed the anomaly's output as fast as they were able. "Our chronon stores are holding level," Sophia said. "Containing Dr. Kim is our biggest drain currently, but a necessary one. If we didn't have a regulator, I doubt we would be able to contain him at all." "Lifeboat," Paul said. "Is it getting what it needs?" "At this rate, the tower's capacitor will be fully charged in 18 months, well ahead of our schedule. However, if the end-of-time event occurs 5 years from now, as you say, a ground zero continues to generate chronon particles at current rate, I estimate we'll have enough chronon energy stored in these batteries to maintain causality in a limited area for a number of years. Long enough to develop a solution to the crisis. If there is a solution." "What if the MJ field were to collapse this week?" Sophia glanced at him. "Just answer the question." "Less than a year. 18 months if we're extremely frugal. Less than a month if for some reason the regulator ceases to function. I really do wish you would let me examine the research your people are doing on that. I feel confident Paul's phone began vibrating against his chest. "I want you to have your people keep an eye on the ambient chronon levels," he told her. "And look for any of the fluctuations or deformations in the Meyer-Joyce field. If you detect anything at all, let me know." Paul took out his phone. It was Martin Hatch. He knew what this was about. "Martin!" "Paul, we held off, but I insist we send in the troops now." "Is Jack still at the farm?" "Yes, and his accomplice." "I'll be free in..." Paul checked his watch, glanced at Sophia. 90 minutes, she said. "I could be at the farm in 1 hour and 45. The team is quite capable of bringing Joyce in without your involvement." "His brother is dead, Martin. He hasn't been home in 6 years. Right now, he'll be going through grief and adrenaline crash. 2 hours from now, I'll be able to talk him in, not hog-tie and drag him. Let me know if anything changes." Hatch said nothing. "Martin?" "Yes, Paul. I'll keep you notified."